Okay. Now, I made a life cycle of a conservative female commentator. Now, the beginning of a female conservative commentator life cycle happens to be that they are very liberal. Now, when I was young, I grew up going to pro-life rallies, and I grew up going to all these different conservative stuff. I grew up in a pretty conservative family. But I wouldn't say that's the norm for young women nowadays. Now it's the norm to be liberal. And so the conservative female commentator life cycle is be liberal in college or early 20s. Step 2, get a job working for a man. Now, option A is to sleep with the man or be really hot. That's one option you could go. Option 2 is do not sleep with him, but be a woman or a minority with an opinion that is unpopular for your group. Now, I'm going to acknowledge, I'm going to be honest here and say I do benefit from this, right? I mean, how famous, how well known would I be if I had opinions that were the same as every other woman? What blew me up was a woman with an unpopular opinion for her group. Now 3, get famous and be worshipped for all opinions, even the stupid ones. Typically go after low-hanging fruit and ways to virtue signal. So one thing that happens when you go into the RP space is you figure out what gynocentric language is. And many people are paid through the woman's dollar. Women make 80% of consumer buying decisions, and many people's bottom line paycheck comes from that. So you don't see many people attacking family court because they need to keep the women paying money, right? I mean, is it better that the men have authority in their homes and they tell their wife to put the credit card down? Or is it better if the women have authority in their homes and they can say, buy my membership? What's better for the corporations? Now, typically what happens is the conservative commentator female life cycle is they leave the company usually on bad terms, claim unfair pay, claim sexual harassment, start some sort of drama on the way out that gets you fired. And it must be, what's really important is this must be a big deal, even though if it happened to a man, nobody would care. Men, put a 1 in the chat if you have ever been fired for an unfair reason. Has that ever happened to you? And did anybody give a shit? Did anybody? Have you ever been fired for something that was completely out of your control? Maybe it was your boss's fault. Maybe it was something you got blamed for. Did you get sympathy? No. Did you get the benefit of the doubt? No. But women go into the workforce and say, I deserve the benefit of the doubt and I deserve sympathy. I mean, how many men? And I deserve to not be under NDA. I mean, have you guys ever been in an industry that requires you to sign an NDA? It's not uncommon because one, maybe you have competitive practices you don't want to share. Non-competes are also a thing. Many times people, to get into a certain industry, you have to sign a non-compete or an NDA saying you can't disparage the company after. Not abnormal. So during this process, if a woman gets status or clout for any of these things that I listed, she has a tendency to tell everyone that you were successful through your hard work and negate that your beauty had any influence on it. And then lecture men on business and work ethic and give no recognition to the team that was behind you. Now, by the way, not every one of these things does have anything to do with this story. I'd like to say this is just a general life cycle, and we're going to get into the specifics of this story. Now, next, marry rich. Definitely not in your 20s because that would stifle your career. Become a Karen and tell men that they are not man enough and need to stop watching porn, even though no one knows what you did in your 20s. Obviously use your husband for clout and as part of your brand after. If the conservative commentators do get married young, they will not have children until their late 20s, early 30s. Have 1 to 2 kids tops. Definitely don't leave the public eye when they're young or, take time off. Then divorce. They have a tendency to reframe themselves on the side of good. They view themselves as only good, fighting for good. And there just is a lack of gratitude for their previous employers. An example of this, even outside of this situation, is Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly, would anyone know who she was if it weren't for Fox News? And what did she do? What was the thank you? Lawsuit. A lawsuit. Now, we're going to talk about conservative women in general. Again, this is not speaking about the case that we're going to get to, but in general, the patterns of behavior that I have noticed from conservative women. So let's talk about virtue signaling. Now, virtue signaling is the act of expressing opinions or actions to appear good, often on social media. It's often used as a derogatory term to imply that someone is more concerned with appearing virtuous than taking a meaningful action. Expressing opinions that are acceptable to others. Act in a way to exhibit one's good character, social conscience, or political convictions. Examples: making a show of an electric car this is what Google gave me. But something I think about more is the women that take selfies praying. You know, again, church used to be a sacred place. And now we're filming baptisms. Now it's all become a spectacle. There are Bible verses in people's bios. Influencers convert 5 minutes ago and then use it as a virtue signal. It's just getting annoying. Okay, so conservative women have a tendency to use the sacraments as a way to shame you. I will pray for you. You need to go to confession. I would never do that. It just speaks to their character. Their character is so bad. They have a tendency to think they are brave. Conservative commentators have a tendency to think they're brave truth tellers when really they're in a protected class where we get to say what we want. And because we are a part of a group, we get more freedom to speak than a man would speak. And the men are the ones protecting us as we say it. For example, you know, many times conservative commentators are not able to defend themselves, but they hire male security, right? They also have a tendency to believe that God gave them their platform and that they are speaking for God. They convert when they are paid to, conveniently when they are paid to, not, you know, when it's hard to be a certain, like, it's tough to be a conservative in college. And, you know, when I was in college, it's interesting. I wasn't overly political at the time, but I leaned conservative, right? Guys, when I was in 8th grade, this is embarrassing. I was arguing on the playground. About abortion and Obama being elected and saying he shouldn't be elected. I didn't know anything. But I was in 8th grade. My mom took me to a Sarah Palin rally. I was pumped up. I tell my mom, she doesn't believe in the, I can't say it anymore, but the repeal the, you guys know. I can't say that anymore on YouTube, at least. And I told her, I'm like, Mom, you fueled this fire. 2 things made me political: the Sarah Palin rallies and my dad explaining to me how taxes work were key moments. And my dad listening to talk radio. I'm like, you're responsible. Repeal the I can't say it here. I can't say it. Which, by the way, yeah, they said they only convert when they have double-digit body counts. I know. It's convenient. And, you know, as someone that's I don't want to say a diehard Catholic. I'm Catholic, but I'm not the best Catholic. That's why I don't like to be a spokesperson for the religion. I don't go find better Catholics than me. Okay? That's my favorite one. But there's just better women. There's better men you can learn from. Just learn from someone better than me. Do you know what I mean? I'm not gonna, I don't know, Jesus for clout. It's just a weird, I don't know. I just can't do it. But, you know, when I see people converting to I don't want to say my religion because I don't want to put myself up there as a representative, but a religion I at least grew up with. And they did it a couple of years ago. The average length someone stays at a church is like 7 years. Let me see like 20 years of dedication, and then you can come back and be a spokesperson. But, you know, when you're live streaming your baptism, I start to get a little bit annoyed. I start to get a little irritated. I don't know. Anyways, so generally, the conservative commentators get famous off a man's work, off of their beauty, or because they are a woman with an unpopular opinion, but they'll claim that it was hard work. Now, Now, to be fair, media is competitive, and I will always say that media is a competitive industry. A lot of people want to do it. But I mean, one guy dies on a fishing boat in Alaska every week trying to get us crabs so we can eat crabs. Do you think it's a little out of touch to say that you have a hard job when there are men dying to get us crabs? Yeah, it is competitive, but there's a difference between competitive and difficult. And the top streamers, I mean, what's that streamer's name? That streamer that jumped over a car for clout. Is it Kai Cenat? I don't know. One of the streamers, the young guy, he even said this. He said a 9 to 5 is harder. Harder. Now, they have a tendency to reference, conservative commentators have a tendency to believe they are right if the comment section agrees with them. And you'll see this. They have a tendency to not reference personal stories, their morals. It's more, but the comment section said this. They'll refer to a ratio. And it reminds me of a story that my dad told me. You know, sometimes I tell my dad about these trends on the internet. My dad's not an internet guy. But again, the smartest person I've really ever met in my life. Anyone that meets my dad, I consider them lucky. He's so awesome. But he told me once, I'll tell him about conspiracy theories on the internet or things I just want his take on because he's just so wise, you know. And I'll say, this person said this or thought this, and he says, so. Half of the country voted for Kamala. People believe weird things. That doesn't mean they're right. And that's generally how men think. Men don't go with the trends as much. Men aren't as influenced by public opinion like women are. And that's, you know, where at times we don't always make as good of commentators at times because the men, they say stick to the facts. And women have a tendency to stick to the trends. Pearl needs to talk with Candace. I met Candace. Look, I think, and I've said this before, I think Candace Owens' work at BLM I loved that work. But I talk about gender dynamics, and I've never really been able to see her the same since the Crowder tape. When I see her offer a retraction, I may have a different view. But if you want to put yourself as a journalist and you call someone else in the industry an abuser, and now there's no police report, it's been over a year, and I'm waiting, where's the retraction? I think Daily Wire should have offered a retraction too. That's a different topic, different day. But anyways, back to the tactics. Most religious women have a tendency, you cannot tell they're religious by their behavior. So they have to virtue signal through attending church, a cross necklace, social media posts, Bible verses in their bio, and using the words of powerful religious men to bolster their points. When you are religious, I should be able to tell based on your actions. You shouldn't even have to tell me that you're religious. I should just, there's a woman I grew up close to, and she was so funny. Oh my gosh, she's hilarious. But she is a Catholic, and she actually was a convert. She has no social media. She is a trad wife through and through. And I can tell, and she has never been a Bible thumper, but I bet you she has changed more hearts because of the way that she treats people. That is the number one way that you are going to convert people. No, it's not that bullshit, be nice stuff, right? It's not the BS, accept gay people in church, blah, blah, blah. It's really just when you can tell they've had a change of heart. And it's rare. You barely ever see it. Now, the manipulation tactics of traditional women have a tendency to be they have not read the Bible from cover to cover or truly understand it, but they hold you to it. Some of their favorite verses are to love your husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church, to justify you being a slave and doing whatever that they want. Use the Bible verse to change their husband's behavior. Instead of, being a good person and letting their actions speak for themselves, they'll ask you what church you attend, ask you if you have been saved, sit in the front row of the church, film themselves doing holy things, use their platforms to spread God's message. Again, I don't have a problem with you doing that, but you converted 5 minutes ago. Could I just get a little proof of concept? Just like could I get like a little bit of validity. You know what I mean? Sit in the front row of church, film themselves doing holy things, spend time on social media instead of watching their kids, use their kids and their husband for clout. And they think they know what God thinks and that they can and should speak for God, even though they always forget the verse about the women being quiet in the back of the church. You know, we always forget that. Now, they always say they have a relationship with God and not that they obey God. And the reason they do that is so they can, I mean, it's pretty easy to say you have a relationship. I mean, I could say I have a relationship and then go be a whore Monday to Friday, right? I mean, do you know what I mean? That's easy. But if you say I obey God, that holds you to like a standard. And then the men will be like, weren't you doing porn last week? You got tag teamed. And they're like, no. I have a relationship. And the simps, like you, Michael Knowles, I'm sorry. Look, I think you're a cool guy, but it's a simp epidemic. You got to kill the simp in you. Because these porn stars are running circles around you. You know what I mean? Initiate verbal and emotional violence and then try to control or shame the person's reaction. Trad wives have a tendency to scream about how men are not doing enough. They will shame men for not providing for their family, but skip over the fact that women are not marrying young. They will shame men for watching porn, even though they themselves were not virgins on their wedding day. They will shame men for exploring their options, even though they did the same thing in most of them. And on average, the conservative commentators married 5 million in net worth. I took 50 conservative commentators. The average was 5 million, and I took out a billionaire to even it out. One of them married a billionaire. It was that Eva woman. I forgot her name. Eva something. Married into a billionaire family. And it made sense. She was really attractive. So, you know, it makes sense. Now, oftentimes they're not as hot or innocent as they used to be. Good women will make up for this by being good in bed, learning skills that make man's life easier, getting in better shape. However, these women will think, no, I don't want to do that. I would rather wait till marriage, sell a used car for a higher price. And usually the man that signs up is an idiot, just not that smart, or he has a low female IQ. We've talked about this on the show. And this is, when I say female IQ, what I'm referencing is men's ability to see through women's bullshit. I mean, a man can be very, very intelligent, but have a low female IQ. Like Michael Knowles. I mean, that guy's a smart guy. We can't say he's not smart. But his female IQ is negative 1,000. I mean, if you're interviewing a porn star about God, you're an idiot, at least in that regard, right?